English teachers around the world. It's time for another webinar brought to you by the American TESOL Institute. I have the pleasure to host each month. My name is Jason R. Levine. I'm also known as Fluency MC. And this topic, I mean, I'm lucky that the topics here are always interesting to me, and I believe very useful for teachers, wherever you are, whomever you're teaching, age, level. And we've got another one, but this one is really interesting to me. It's an area I've done a lot of work in personally, and just really excited to share what I've done with you, and especially if you're a new teacher. I think what I'm going to talk about today will really help, but also teachers with experience who've never used dictation. It could be a real eye-opener for you. So yes, the magic of dictation, brought to you by the American TESOL Institute. Let's get into it. This might be going through your mind. What's so magical about it? Dictation, that word, and I ask students, and when I train teachers, we talk about this. What does that word evoke for you? Probably not magic, unless you're a teacher who's used it a lot, like I have, and used it in certain ways, which we'll get into very soon. But yes, it's true that it has a bad reputation, deservedly so. If you associate with dictation is kind of just mindless teacher-driven language where students just have to copy it down. Why? What's the purpose? What are they going to do with it? At the same time, there is some logic even to that old, boring, traditional dictation as far as what it can help students achieve skill-wise in language learning, but as we all know, even if something could help, if it's not interesting, students won't be motivated to do it, and a good teacher won't be motivated to do it because they'll associate it with learning that's not communicative, that's not meaningful, and it really doesn't have to be that way. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't the case, and I wouldn't be calling it magical if I didn't think it was. But yes, you're forgiven if you think that it's old-fashioned, boring, and teacher-centered. Let's talk about that. So this is kind of what I was thinking when I say, even if it's boring, teacher-centered, traditional, old-fashioned, it could still help build language skills, obviously listening and writing, although it's less of a writing activity as more of a language building activity. It's not simply writing, it kind of happens through writing, but then there's also pronunciation that can be built, and speaking practice if you make it interactive, which you should. Every dictation activity can be interactive and communicative, and student driven for sure. So we'll talk about that. You may also be thinking about reading. Well, yeah, reading is really involved in this in a very cool way, which we'll look at. But if it's interesting, if it's fun, and the teacher knows what they're doing with different types of activities, we can really build all four skills. So when I say it's highly engaging and interactive, I mean when it's done right. Really amazing in terms of how you can adapt it depending on the age of students, the level of students, and that's because you can start with almost any content, or not almost any content, for sure. And that's what I mean by any material here. So we'll see lots of examples of that. Little preparation, really amazing what you can do as a teacher with almost no time. You can take almost anything you're going to do and put a dictation spin on it once you get comfortable with different ways to do dictation activities. And I love this one. I mean, you can really, when you started, especially if students are in the habit of doing it and they know it's a cool activity that's going to come with it, then they will be very focused on listening and trying to catch what you're saying in the dictation. And it's really great to build concentration, especially with big groups. Because this works with really big groups as well as small groups, and we all know how hard it is to hold students' attention, especially in big groups, if they share the same first language, for example. So this can be it's really, really great way to get students' attention and keep their attention. And how you can introduce a topic. It's not only for that, but I can't think of any other activity where whatever the topic is, whether it's grammar focused, whether it's vocabulary focused, whether it's a news event, that you couldn't start with the dictation. And I almost always will start with the dictation as a way to get into it, and students kind of start to expect that, and they know it helps them. And so these are what 7 points I put here. I could have gone on with more, but anyway, they'll come out as we go on, and I explain specific examples. The real magic, what's really happening, I just made those points, but I want to make sure it's clear. 2 things that are happening that are so special. One is this. I've been teaching 25 years, and if a student says, what is the most important thing or the easiest way for me to learn English or build my fluency in English, my 4 skills, it's this one, right? It's reading and listening at the same time, especially if you're doing something then with what in a meaningful way with what you're reading and listening to. So this is why I make songs, because listening to songs while you read the lyrics makes such a huge difference. Dictation, it's the same. You're doing reading and listening. You might be thinking, but isn't it writing? It's listening and writing. Yes, but the reading comes in a very, very important way. And this is why students who watch series with subtitles learn so quickly. If they're interested, if it's the right level and they're interested in the series they're watching. And there's so many more examples. But in the classroom, the way that you can focus on reading and listening through a dictation is really special. So that's something to keep in mind as we proceed here. And especially what is the main reason dictation is so effective? And it's this one. There's so much repetition. If you do it right, they just want to keep repeating. There's that instinct to repeat when you're a child learning your first language. You want to hear the same song again. You want to read the same book again. It's meaningful because you like the song, you like the book. As you get older, middle school, even and older, it's that feeling like, I don't want to repeat. Well, dictation helps you repeat. Cool activities with dictation help you repeat because you need to repeat. It's like you can't learn piano without repeating. You can't learn basketball without repeating. And it's the same thing with language. But if it's not meaningful, doesn't work. And if you don't get it, it doesn't work. It's not going to come from studying something more or trying to memorize more. It needs to be natural and meaningful repetition. And, when you do an activity well, a dictation activity, this is what happens, right? They just want, please, can you read it again? Please, do it again. Because they're trying to complete something. They're trying to, solve a puzzle, basically, right? Again, when you do it right. I'll stop saying that. But yeah, last time, if it's some boring dictation, they don't want to hear it again. They just want to get it over with. But if it's a cool activity, then they know that they want to get as close as they can to getting it right, because the activity that's around it is so interesting. So this is what you want. And if you're teaching very young learners, you get this all the time. You don't even get this. You just repeat. They'll repeat. But as you have older learners, as they get older, this is such a beautiful thing to hear. And I hear it all the time when I teach, because I like to do activities, not just dictation, but other activities too, that require repetition. And the students want that repetition. But with dictation, well, we'll see. How do you do it? Well, how to do a dictation? There's certainly not one way only to do it. I'd like to, instead of outlining a procedure, show you an example. I mean, it depends on what the content is. So let's start with, we're going to see lots of different types. Let's start with something I call a question dictation. I'm sure I'm not the only one who calls it that, where I would dictate a bunch of sentences. a bunch. 5 is a good number. So I'm just going to explain how I do this, and you can imagine if the text is longer, it's different. But anyway, the most important points I hope I'll make here. So I would say, okay, guys, take out, if it's pen, pencil, if it's computer, if it's phone, this is another great thing. It doesn't matter. Unless it matters to you that you want them to improve their handwriting, or you want them to do it with a keyboard anyway. I usually, whatever they want to do, however they want to write, that's fine. And of course, in real life, when they're listening to things and needing to understand them, if they're writing them down, they could write them down in different ways. Of course, they may not be writing them down, and that's one of the great things about dictation, right? Is that it's an opportunity to write down something like, these type of questions that they could get and be like, "What did you say?" Right? And now with the dictation, we can get look at it more closely. So here's what I would do. I would say, please write down what you hear. I'm going to ask you some questions. Here's the first one. What did you do over the weekend? Now, I would never do it as what did you do over the weekend? And you can see I even highlight the word and the sentence stress here. This is enormously important. So I would much rather repeat it more times, again, the repetition, than make it unnatural. Now, the speed is something else. So whether it's you speed it up or slow it down, but the rhythm is the same, right? So fast would be, what did you do over the weekend? And if you wanted to give them some practice with listening to fast speech, you could do that. But if you do it slowly, it's what did you do over the weekend? It's always going to be what did you do? It's never going to be what did you do? So what I like to do is this. I'm just going to demonstrate. What did you do over the weekend? They start to write, and then pretty quickly I come back in. What did you do over the weekend? Then I would wait longer. What did you do over the weekend? 3 times. And this is just for a sentence, and I might do it more than that, but I tend to do it, if we're doing sentence by sentence, 1 time, then a second time pretty quickly. So they start writing the first part. You say it again, they sort of start writing into the second. Then you pause to give them time to finish that, and then 1 more time. And then at the end of all of them, I would be like, okay, number 1, and they should be numbered, definitely. I didn't number them here. Number 1, what did you do over the weekend? Number 2, how did the meeting go yesterday? Number 3, have you followed up, right? Like this. Then what's next? Again, this is just what I do, but I find it works really well. I would have them compare what they have. This is a really important piece to what I do, and I don't see it as often as I expect to see it when I look at dictation activities in books and on the internet. This is the first place where you can make it communicative. Have them compare, even if they're just speaking their first. I mean, if they share the same first language, it might be in their first language that they're talking about it. That's fine. But if you have groups with different native languages, right? They're communicating in English. Help each other, right? Help each other, I say. See if you agree. And then I kind of circulate similar or different what you have, right? If it's a small enough group, and if I'm not sure of their levels, and I might be looking at it a little bit, trying to see, but not correcting it, right? Not making any comments about it, really. Just kind of looking at it. And then the next thing is comparing it to the original, and what you do when you compare it to the original. So you could have it up on the board. You could have them, elicit it from them and write it up on the board. You could have them come up and try to do it, and then look at the mistakes together, right? So many things you could do here. You can also have them answer the questions. Like once you've corrected it, what did you do over the weekend? Get together, make a dialogue about one of them, right? So many communicative things can come out of dictation. And so anyway, that's a basic thing. I don't want to spend too much time on it, because each activity is a little different, but we'll see some of the basics of just repeating it enough time, giving them time to write, right? Giving them time to hear and write, but it will depend on the activity. So let's keep going. I have a lot of stuff here today for you guys, so I want to make sure we get through it. But before we go to the individual activities, that was just an example. Let's look a little bit quickly, but it's important, at what skills are learned by doing dictations, and then we'll get to the activities, and then we'll look at some activities for practice outside the classroom. Amazing opportunities for this as well. So skills learned through dictation, I mentioned earlier, really all 4 skills. The biggest one probably is listening fluency. So if listening is something that's difficult for your learners, depends on their first language, their age, their level, etc. But certainly for my students, I'm in France, and the French sound system and the English sound system are so different. So I also struggle with listening in French, as I know others do as well. And that's because I'm not a fluent listener in French. Because French is syllable timed, it sounds like da, 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 da. I'm still like looking for that rhythm in English, and I don't use good strategies. So yeah, it's bad. I need to work on myself, but I'm spending more of my time helping French people learn English than helping myself learn French, but that's okay for the moment. So if we look at the question dictation, one reason I wanted to have it there was so we could go into this idea of listening fluency, because English is stress timed, right? The great thing is if you can help students really listen for those stress sounds, we can really look at how the meaning is in those words, right? What do weekend? How meeting yesterday? Followed all procedures, right? So that dictation could also be, don't write down the sentence, write down the words you hear that are stressed, right? You could also give them the words that are stressed and have them find the grammar or the function words, which we'll look at in a moment. So many, dictation, once you start thinking about it, you can just vary it in so many ways, and it happens very naturally. It's not difficult. It's very intuitive. And you can see with your group also what works and what doesn't work well. But this is paramount, I think. It's the listening fluency, listening for the stressed words. And there are other activities you can do for this, but dictation works so well. So, also when you elicit the full script, you can also where's the stress? Which words did you hear that are stressed? So that's one thing I like to do. For example, if I elicit, okay, guys, before you tell me what number 1 is, which words are the stressed words? Okay, what, right? Do, weekend, right? And then don't fill it in yet, right? Maybe keep going and try to get this on the board or show them this, because here's the amazing thing. It's also a big challenge. That dictation really shows us how 2 things need to happen simultaneously as a language user, right? One is listening fluency, listening for those stressed words that are most important, right? So if somebody says, how was the meeting yesterday? And you hear, or maybe a better one is, was the meeting successful? Was the meeting successful yesterday? Was the meeting successful yesterday? Meeting successful yesterday. How do you catch those words without feeling uncomfortable about how the sentence was spoken? But at the same time, if you want to ask that question, how can you ask the question with grammatical accuracy? Because unfortunately, we can't say, how, was meeting successful? How meeting yesterday, right? So this is why dictation is awesome. It's about that balance, right? And you can be working on one more than the other, depending on who your students are. You can be working on both together. So I like to do it together because my students need both, right? So emphasizing the importance of catching that what do weekend. But then what do those little words look like compared to how they sound, right? What did you, right? Even slowly, what did you, right? It might not be what did you, it might be what did ya, but it's never what did you. So I don't always show what I call the shrinking and linking, right? The reduced and connected speech. Don't always show it, but certainly at the first time I meet with students, really looking at the way it looks and sounds. But then after that, focusing more on the stressed words and the fact that those function words, the auxiliary verbs, the pronouns, the prepositions, the articles, the determiners, all of that, that they start to notice them. And that's the reading. That's why one of the main reasons why reading and listening together is so important, because when you listen, you want to listen for the important words. But when you read, what happens is you see all those grammar words that you need when you speak and write. There's no way around it, right? We need both. And I've sort of alluded to this, but I want to get more into it. Sound spelling relationships. When you read and listen together, and dictation is sort of going under the microscope with listening and writing, and then reading, comparing it to the original, like we just saw with that question dictation, you're also automatically, unless you analyze, which can be good too, automatically making a connection between how words are spelled and how they sound. And this is really important in a language like English, where there are so many words where the spelling and the sounds don't agree, right? Words with different spellings that sound the same, and words with the same spellings that sound different. So lots of examples of this, but let me just give you, this is a good one. You can use this as a dictation. I've done it. Try it if you have more higher level students. English is weird. It can be understood through tough, thorough thought, though. Really fun to do this as a dictation so they can see, wow, same spelling, different sound. But then you can also have different spelling, same sound. So here, the idea is practice with there, T-H-E-R-E, there, T-H-E-I-R, and there. And this one, sometimes students don't believe it sounds the same. Is it really there, there, there? Yes, it is. So this is one I like to do, so students get practice with the spelling of there and the correct use of there. Lots more I could say about sound spelling relationships. I'm sure I will do it as we go along. So those are the main skills I wanted to focus on. There are others. As we said, it's all 4 skills. So there's many things you could talk about with the skills learned from dictations, but those are, I think, at least to me, the most important. So getting to the activities, because there are so many cool ones, and I had a longer list than what I had here. I had to cut some out. And even before I cut them out, there were other ones I wanted to do. So, these are great. And if you've taught English and used dictation activities, you're sure to recognize a few of these. But I think a few of them might be new. A few of them I have my own little twist on. But really, I've decided to focus on those that I think are sort of tried and true. So if you're a new teacher, especially, I think this can really help you. But again, if you don't use dictation in the classroom, then this could also be new and cool for you as well. So the first thing, definitely, I think we should start with is a dictogloss. What is a dictogloss? And a dictogloss is reconstructing a dictated text. So here's the procedure. I'll let you kind of listen, read it while I talk about it. But yeah, this is a really cool activity. I do it all the time. You can do it with any text, but of course, any dictation is with any text. But when I say that it relates to your lesson, so it could be, a lot of people use these for grammar structures, like present perfect, past simple, or future continuous, for making plans versus going to, and this kind of thing. I tend to use it more with, I'll show you an example, with real content, like in the media, newspaper, magazine, this sort of thing. With my students, I teach adolescents and adults. This is not, it doesn't have to be 4 times. This is an example. But this is maybe a good thing to start with, to try it once and you can change it. But what's unusual here is that they don't write down everything. So like one of the things you might think about dictation, and one of the things that makes it sound so like, rigid, is you just listen and write down every word and that's it. And then, you compare to the first one, correct your mistakes. Or even worse, you're penalized for how many mistakes you have. So here, as you can see, you're listening without writing anything, writing keywords, maybe the stress words that you hear, like we said before, and then making it interactive, right? Having them not just compare what they wrote, but taking those keywords and now trying to put them in phrases and then making complete sentences. Do they have to get everything perfect? So reconstructing and try to write the complete text does not mean it has to be complete. In fact, some people would say you should not try to do that. You could have a different version of it as long as it communicates the same meaning. It doesn't need to be the same. But you could also have them try. A lot of students want to try to get it as close to the original as they can. But Dictogloss are really great. Here's an example of something I would use around this length. And the nice thing about a Dictogloss is, unlike what I showed you with the question dictation, you don't stop and let them write every time. So it's more natural in that way. So I could read the whole thing once, right? They're writing just the keywords. I was just listening, read it again, keywords, right? But you could do it more times and have it's just such a cool activity. And I'm just going to say this now, because it's you can take. I've divided this into. Sorry, let me get my idea straight here. Here we go. I've divided this part of the webinar into classroom activities and out of class practice, but everything practically you can see here in classroom can be adapted to out of class practice. And here's an example. You could record your voice saying this, or this could be something that's from a radio broadcast. Could they work interactively? No, but they could try listening once, right? You can give them a procedure, and I have procedures like that coming for out of class practice, but just keep in mind that almost anything here can be done either directly with a recording. It doesn't have to be just you face to face, and that also makes it interesting if you're doing online work or you're teaching students remotely and they're not always with you. I threw this in here because, as I said, I like to do dictoglosses with content like from a magazine or a newspaper. You could also just dictate. I do this a lot. Dictate the headline of an article you're going to start reading. Remember what I said earlier about introducing a topic. A kicker is like, a short summary, like a second headline. Really nice with stuff that's online now, just, in your feed, a news feed, right? So if you find a cool article, you could dictate just the headline and the kicker, and then have them discuss what do they think the article is going to be about, et cetera, et cetera. And you can show just, for them to check. Always important to have them check their dictation. You could, on the overhead or on your screen, whatever, show that headline and kicker, and then have them discuss what they think the article is about. So it's, it's you could just show them the title and have them think what it's about, or a picture, what is it about. But the great thing about dictation is they're really focusing on those words and just getting that extra listening, reading, and writing practice. You could dictate discussion questions. In fact, why photocopy anything? Well, that's an exaggeration. But, instead of having a list of discussion questions or debate questions, if you want to have questions like, small talk questions, what do you do in your free time sort of things, or get to knowing someone and you want them to make a dialogue or whatever you want, you can dictate the material ahead of time. So if I do any kind of discussion question, discussion activity or debate activity, I would do that first. Beep dictation. This has a lot of names. Cough dictation, like you'll see what I mean in a moment. I'm not crazy about the name beep dictation. To be honest, I don't call this anything. I just do it. But because I guess I've never, when I train teachers, what do I call it? I think I used to talk about the cough dictation. I'll explain. Here's what you do. This is for you. You remove the 8 to 10 words. And then you do it. But when you get to a gap, you say, so you can either go, or you can say gap. I've seen people do that, just gap or beep, right? This is cool because it gives them a chance to be more creative. So you could make it more or less controlled, right? This morning I up to the bathroom, my teeth, and a shower. That's not really creative, but that's because I wanted this one to be more focused on past simple verbs, irregular verbs, also regular verbs there as well. But it could be more open-ended, right? I think I have something like that coming. So let me differentiate now. This example, it's more controlled, more focused. I really expect them to write woke, went, brushed, and took, or British English, had a shower. You can think of the endless possibilities you can do with something like this. And as always, have them compare before they look at the original is what I would suggest. All gaps dictation. So there's another one like that. These are kind of mixed up, but that's okay. So I'll refer back. There's another one a little bit like what I just showed you that's more creative. The all gaps dictation seems really wild at first, but it also has a kind of wow factor. So I'll show you. What you do, I have a few of these. I wrote this myself. There's some online too. I was inspired from Celtic course. The Celtic course I took back in 1998. Wow, 25 years ago, was the teachers were really into dictation, and they showed us this activity. And what's cool about it is there's some TPR. It doesn't have to be. I have some that I've written that don't have it. But the idea for this one is you're shopping for a bathing suit. Everyone stand up. You're shopping for a bathing suit. Kind of like, you're looking, right? You finally find one you like. Right? So you do like hand. So you head for a changing room to try it on. Take off your clothes. That's always funny, right? Okay, no, don't really do it. Don't really do it. So this one's focusing on the imperative, right? Take off, put on some phrasal verbs. You can see I want to practice here. What you do is you get them you repeat it again and again, maybe faster, slower. They'll be like, what's going on? They don't know it's a dictation. You're probably wondering, how is it a dictation? If they're just, listening and they are miming or doing the movements. You do it enough times that when you give them this, now that's what's going to happen. The wow part is like not always a good wow. Like, what? What are you guys going to do when you give them this? They're looking like, oh my goodness, that's not possible. Sure it is. Each space corresponds to a word. So you can do it by the word, which is what I did for this one, right? You're shopping for a bathing suit. You're shopping for a bathing suit, period. You can also just do it by the letter. That's another one for spelling. So there's different ways to do it. In fact, this one I have in both versions, right? Such a cool activity. Now, if you're thinking it's too hard for them, they'll never be able to do it the first try. That's exactly right. This is one of those where the students say, do it again, read it again, read it again. So I'll give it to them. I'll say, but don't you think you can remember the last part maybe? Wow, you look good. Some of them will be like, oh yeah, wow, right? Don't have to put it in all at the same time. This is really one of my favorites because of the repetition that they want to get it done. And you can make it a competition. First people to finish, and then with it correct, right? Because there'll be some mistakes. It's a lot of fun. Strongly recommend all gaps dictation. Student-led dictation. Now, are there dictations that could not be student-led? Maybe not. So I just have a very simple, whatever the text is, instead of you reading it. Now, if the student's pronunciation, if the students need more exposure to you as a native speaker or a very advanced speaker, if you're non-native, then dictation is an opportunity for them to hear English similar to what they're going to hear out there. On the other hand, if they're a little higher level, English is a world language. They need to hear other people's English, including their classmates' English, especially if there's a mix of students from different countries. Wow, that's a really good opportunity for them to get exposure to different accents by having them to do it. And then, needless to say, what makes this cool is it's not a teacher-led thing. So whatever the text is, and not whatever the activity is, but for a lot of them, they can do it. So it's very simple. I mean, there are variations you can imagine on this. Are they dictating to the whole class? Are they in small groups? But definitely students love doing it too. It's a lot of fun. So that's sort of for everything almost. Jumble dictation. What is a jumble dictation? Well, here's an example. Scramble, a jumble. This is just one way to do it. I hope by now you can maybe think of variations, because I'm not going to go into all of them. And there's always variations on these activities that I've never thought of, and no teachers thought of. You'll do it. You'll do something original, I'm sure. But the basic idea, right? I say from a story. It doesn't have to be a story, but let's imagine now it's young learners. I've been talking a lot about adults. It's a very simple story. Very simple story. And each student gets a sentence from it, but in a random order. So we don't know. That's the jumble part, the scramble part. So they dictate the sentence. This could be you, but here's another example of a student-led dictation. They dictate the sentence. Once the sentences are the group has their sentences, then they have to find the correct order. So there's an added level here of comprehension, not just and of reading comprehension, and then they're going to check it with the original. So many variations you can do on that one. That's just one example. Information gap dictation. Wow, this is another one that is just endless possibilities with what you're working on. So the basic idea, and I have an example for this one, is you have two versions of the same text. And this is one of those things people don't often call a dictation, but it is. And there are a few more examples coming of things maybe you didn't think of were dictation, but they are. So student A, right, has one version, student B has the other version, and they need to dictate it to each other. Maybe you've seen this before. There are activities online that are already done, but you can do it with anything you want. In this case, I did it with part 4 from the TOEIC. There's more test prep dictation ideas coming. I love using test prep material, listening scripts, because it's so valuable. If they're going to take the test, they should get as much practice and repetition with the vocabulary and the situations and the grammar, etc. But just, doing test practice is boring and doesn't have them getting enough repetition usually. So we need to build the repetition in. So here's a great way, right? So this first student says, "Welcome to Branson Tech's," and the student has to write. Second student has to write. Seems strange to the first student, but the second student makes sense because they're writing, "Welcome to Branson Tech's second annual conference." The other person says, "On computer security." So the idea is, right, you have this gap and you're trying to complete it together. This works really well for instructions, giving directions, all kinds of great things you can do. But yeah, I like to do it with scripts from the TOEIC and the TOEFL and Cambridge tests. Have you heard of running dictation? If you're a dictation teacher, a teacher that knows about more communicative, dynamic, not old-fashioned dictations, running dictation may be one of the first things you think of. For some teachers, it's absolutely the first thing they think of. It's not just for young learners. Well, let me explain it. If you we'll see, but it definitely is something you kind of associate often with young learners because there's so much movement. But I've done it with adults. I know a lot of teachers have done it with adults and had a lot of success. So here's the basic idea. The reader and the writer. Where do you put the text? This is student-led dictation. You're not dictating. They're dictating to each other. So you see, there's so many ways you can do it where the students are communicating. Do you stick it on the wall in the classroom, outside the classroom? You decide. It's somewhere, not too far. How much do they try to remember? Depends on their level, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't really matter though. It just works, right? They'll figure out what they can really remember and dictate. They run back, tell the writer. Writer writes it down. It's also talk with the scribe and the something. I forget. There's another way to call this activity. Do you have to change roles? No, but it's super cool to do it because then they get a chance to both be the person who has to read, understand, and remember the material, and then the person who has to write it down. Countless variations on this activity, especially just what you do. I mean, the basic thing is sort of there. But you can have them follow up with different things before and after. Before, that's not following up, is it? And I'm not going to focus on what you do before the dictation here. I guess I'm not really doing that. I use dictation often as just the first thing and then the activities that follow. But there are things you can do that lead up to dictations. But anyway, without further digression, these two things, I'll show you, there's another one coming. They're very similar. And the idea is that they're doing this running dictation. This is for running dictation, but it could be other ones. But anyway, for running dictation here, because that frees you up. So when they're doing if it's student-led dictation, you can be doing other stuff that connects to it. So you could have comprehension questions on the board. And so after the text, they've got it, they need to now think about the text itself. So you don't have to do this, but think of how cool that is, right? Instead of just having an activity where, which is great in itself, where they have to, dictate and write things down with keywords or grammar or whatever you're focusing on. If it's something you could take and actually have them answer comprehension questions about it. So context questions about that have to do with the content and the context of it. So that can be very, very cool. This is basically the same thing, but you can also jumble it. So the text is jumbled. When they come back, then they have to put it in the right order, and then you can also ask them comprehension questions about it once they have it complete, right? That's what I love about these activities, the idea that they show it to you once they've got it complete. Okay, now you can look at these questions about the content. Finish the sentence dictation. I think this may be what I was referring to earlier. Let's look. Yeah, so remember the one before, which was the beep dictation, where you go beep or and then you leave a blank. And I gave an example of a more controlled one. This is more open, and this is a lot of fun. So here, future practice is how I use this one. On Saturday, I'm going to, so they write on Saturday, I'm going to, you might need to repeat that, but then you ask them to complete the sentence. After that, I'll probably, so in this case, what I've done is the grammar is there. It's in the dictation. I'll probably, there's the present continuous for future plans. But you could do it the opposite, right? On Saturday, a party. But yes, that's what it is. That's the more controlled one. So it really goes hand in hand with what I showed you earlier with the beep. I like doing the beep one where they have to put in kind of what's expected from the grammar. So it's a little more restricted. And this one is more open. And of course, they will and should make mistakes here, so you can help them. They can compare with their partners. They can create dialogues from this. They can create stories from this. They can combine with people in a small group to write a story. So yeah, really cool activity. Identify the questions dictation. Well, if you remember the one I had before, my question dictation, right? You could also flip that and dictate answers, and they have to come up with it. So I like the question dictations, so they really get used to hearing questions. Hey, so what are you going to do on Friday? What? What are you going to do on Friday? But it could also be I went to a party. Oh, so you could sort of set up the context after you dictated or before, if you like. However you like to do it. I think either way is cool. But then the idea is afterwards, they have to think of the questions. And that definitely can be something they do on their own and compare in a group or put them together, pairs of groups to come up with it. So what I'm trying to get them to think of here is, the WH questions, what did you do? Who did you go to with? Who did you meet? Where was it? How did you get there? When did you get there? When did you arrive? Was it fun? Did you have fun? So another great activity. There's so many, guys, and like I said, I cut it short to make sure we could do it in an hour. You can always Google dictation activities. You're going to find all kinds of stuff, and it's basically good. Some sites explain things better than others. Shouting dictation. What a name, right? If you thought running dictation was rowdy, wait till you try shouting dictation. I'll let you read this while I talk about it, but basically the idea is not necessarily shouting across the room, right? But you have sort of people facing each other, and it's the idea of having to try to understand while there's noise, which is could be very practical in real life, and also just fun. Fun activity. You can have people rotate, sort of like the speed dating thing. I've done that with this one too. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I would definitely try this. It's great for adults. The running dictation doesn't, it's not always so practical with adults, but this one works with kids and adults. Kids sometimes gets a little out of control. Actually, maybe you can imagine, doesn't work always so well. But middle school kids, high school, but adults too, they love it. They love it. It really, really works. Picture dictations, this one's different because you're not writing language, but the person dictating is really working hard with language. Oops, sorry. And you can have them switch roles, switch pictures, right? I already have that there, yeah. Really great for prepositions, right? Giving instructions, but especially prepositions. It could be, for young learners, just I said prepositions, the older learners, right? But even younger learners, right? Like you could practice that, but especially like could be just a cat, a dog, like this kind of thing, like a little like Pictionary. But with older students, you can get into things like directions, like a map, sort of describing where to go, have them create a map, for example, can be very, very cool. Going a little fast because we don't have too much time, and I want to talk about one more classroom activity, dictation fillers. My favorite one, filler meaning just, you have a few minutes. What can you do? Dictate whatever, like whatever they need to practice on. My favorite is numbers. My students need so much help with numbers, right? So I might do a thing. Okay, everybody, number one, 217. Do that one. 217. Number two, 3,521, right? 2 million, what, and especially if and this is any level numbers are needed, any age. But it doesn't have to be that. It could be, flight times. It could be people's names. It can be vocabulary you just practice, especially if it's chunks, collocations. So you just have a few, pull them out anytime. You have a few minutes. Out of class practice. Oh, that says hour of class practice. I knew there'd be a typo in this. This is brand new material today. I think that's the first typo I saw. Okay, I'll correct that. By the way, if you want a copy of these, you can always email me. Easier. I do this with the American TESOL Institute, but I can send you it very quickly if you contact me directly. support@fluencymc.com. So that's support@fluencymc, which is on all these slides, fluencymc.com. Happy to send you the PDF with the corrected out of class practice. So as I said, there are many things we've talked about. You can maybe imagine if the students have a recording. I mean, that's the key, right? If it's a video recording, if it's an MP3, so easy to make voice recordings for students now that they could use. So anything that you would be dictating in the classroom, they could be doing something at home with it. But of course, it also could be not you. And you could do that in class. So sort of also the flip is is true too. There are things here, like for example, using a YouTube video, a speech, that somebody gave. It could be a poem. It could be a song. Obviously, it could be. I say obviously because I do this so much with songs. It could be basically anything. Make it meaningful, make it interesting, something related to what they're interested in and what you're doing in the classroom. And they can just, you could be as simple as just write down as much as you can. Especially if you have the script, you should have a way, either if they're old enough, that they can check, and I'll show you a procedure in a moment, that they can check themselves with subtitles or with a written script, or that they come back to the classroom and you have that and you look at it together, which is great, and especially better for young learners if they're doing that at home. Just as often as just like in the classroom, we're playing, repeating it. I would never say I'm not going to repeat it again. So they should also be able to play as much as they can. It's so nice. This kind of activity is, was not possible before new media like YouTube, and just the ability to go, even like with a CD, to go back, like tapes. It was so much harder to keep going back. So now repeating stuff is so much easier, and it's so important for them to get that repetition. So they can do it with a film. The whole film, no, but part of a film. We can get film scripts, also the subtitles, series, if they like a series, how about if they watch, Stranger Things in their language maybe, but they could take just a scene, like their favorite scene, watch it in English, write down what you can, and we're going to talk about it. Look at the, compare it. It could be a story that they listen to. Or watch. They're great stories the British Council has, and others, audio stories that also have scripts, so you could give them little pieces to listen to and write down, and then you're going to compare. Listening scripts from tests, like I showed you with the TOEIC, with Part 40 you can use. And audiobooks are amazing, and there are more and more of them becoming available, which is so great, because that's that, reading and listening at the same time. I have an audiobook called One Day that I'm going to publish soon. So really great things you can do with having students listen to parts of a book, and write it down, and also shadow, like doing oral spoken dictation, which is coming up. I've saved that for last. Last thing here, this could be applied to what we just what I just showed you for out of class practice. So written dictation, then we're going to look at spoken dictation. So the idea here is basically what I was just saying, but here's a handy procedure. Do it whatever it is, and not the whole, you decide how much it's going to be. Have students listen for the stressed words first. Try to write down those key words that are stress. Watch and listen again. Try to get the shrinking and linking, right? So this is a way to build the listening fluency, as we talked about earlier, and the grammar accuracy, as we also talked about earlier. Oral dictation, to really make this most powerful possible, it can be combined. So let me explain what I mean, but doesn't have to be. But especially for learners who are struggling with listening in English, and therefore also struggling with pronunciation, probably reading, the sound spelling relationships, and of course then producing it themselves, speaking and feeling confident. You can do both. Take a scene from, I'm just going to take a scene from a movie, short scene. They first do
Let's go back,
right? They first do the written dictation, but then once they've checked it, right? Once they check it, they listen to it, and they try to repeat what they heard, and then try with the script. If it's too difficult, you can skip number 2, because honestly, in the end, the most important thing is that they're reading and listening and connecting it together. If they want to challenge, they can try to do it without the script. But if they've already written it and checked it, they can try it without, then try it while they are reading. Guys, we've reached the end of our hour-long webinar. There's a lot more I can say about dictation, and I'm happy to share it with you. If you send me an email, I'll tell you that again, support@fluencymc.com. I leave you with these words of wisdom. Practice, meaning repetition, meaningful repetition, that builds accuracy. And here I don't mean just the grammatical accuracy. It builds accuracy with catching words. So it's okay, listening fluency. But then if you do that more accurately, how do you feel? You build confidence, and that's when you're able to really feel comfortable with the language and use it fluently. And I think this really relates directly to dictation. So what we learn that's not pleasurable, if an activity is not pleasurable, like traditional dictation, well, we probably won't remember it, or we'll remember it as something boring and bad. But anyway, this is what I always end with, but I'm just thinking about how much fun dictations could be, and how it really feels like, you're learning when you're not looking. It's just happening naturally, and you really can feel a difference in how students can feel a difference in how much more aware they are. This is something we didn't talk about that much, so I'm glad I remembered how much more aware they are of mistakes they've made, and where they've made mistakes. They're able to do more self-correction. You as a teacher will be able to notice, do more of a needs assessment with dictation, figure out what the students, where they lack listening skills, or grammar skills, and others. It's just really powerful. But of course, it has to be fun, because what we learn with pleasure, we never forget. So I hope you try some of these activities, and let me know. Get in touch if you telling me how it went, if you do. And thanks to all of you who are here live today with us, and all of you watching the recording. Please help us share the recording out, so it can people, colleagues of yours and friends and more teachers around the world can benefit from it. Thanks so much to the American TESOL Institute for hosting, not for hosting, that's me, for organizing these webinars and letting me host them. It's so much fun. Take care, everybody. Until next time, peace, respect. Bye.